All right, so what these guys are writing about is there's an assignment in classroom. And in classroom, there's a journal, and we're writing about how life would be different if we were uber rich right now and coronavirus is going on. Because in the Masque of the Red Death, Prince Prospero takes his rich friends, invites them to come stay with him, provides for them for a very, very long time, okay? So, and he's locked the doors to the castle, and he doesn't care what's going on outside. He has no empathy for the poor people that are outside, and there's no Snapchat back then, so he has no idea what's going on out there unless he looks out his window and sees people keeling over and blood spurting from his face. Okay, so how is this story similar to what might be happening today in communities that we're not a part of? Okay, I would love for everybody to give me at least one point that you made in your journal entry. All right, Jenna?
Like the people now versus like in the past, like the rich families, like the kids basically just get whatever they want. Like they don't have to learn life lessons and work for what they want and what they want to earn.
Okay, so the people that, okay, so let's put it in the context of a pandemic going on. Okay, so you could add this to your journal if you wanted to. So during the pandemic, most of us had to keep working, right? Because we had bills to pay. So now rich people during the pandemic probably had enough money saved up that they didn't have to keep going to work, unlike us essential workers. So that's true. You just need to kind of try and tie it into the pandemic today. Okay, Hannah?
Like the king locked himself up with family members and stuff, and how we have to if someone in our family gets it, we have to stay in our houses with our family.
Totally similar. You're locked up with the people that are close to you. Okay? He was just able to bring in his friends too, right? Where we were stuck just with our family members. I'm guessing you guys saw each other as friends a little bit too.
But now, rich people live in Beverly Hills, Malibu, California.
Yeah.
It's their own community.
Gated, you guys heard that term before? They live in gated communities. They have walls around their house, or they have, huge fences and things like that. So they have their own exclusive communities to live in. I live on 11th Street. There's no gates going into my community. Dylan, what's one comparison that you made?
Back then they probably had enough materials and everything to survive throughout the whole thing. And rich people nowadays, they probably have enough with the big houses they have and everything.
Yeah, they've got more freezer storage space than we do, right?
Yeah.
Okay, that's a good one. Do you guys remember at the beginning of the pandemic, there was a lot of stuff we were running out of. We've had that conversation, or we did in the spring, that wealthy people probably had it all stockpiled already. Freezers, remember, did you guys know that there was a run on freezers, for meat and stuff? You couldn't buy them for a while because everybody wanted to stock up on meat and the shelves were bare in the grocery stores. What do you have, Allie?
Does it have to relate to rich?
Just say whatever, we'll make it work.
I was gonna say that they had they didn't know how to prevent it. Well, we have some preventions with masks.
That's exactly right. Yeah, it just has to be part of the story. It doesn't have to do anything with rich people. Yeah, they had no way to treat their pandemic. That's a really good one, okay? Now our treatments aren't perfect because we're learning as we go, but at least we have some medicine. That's a really good one. Yeah, Cole.
Well, I did someone specific.
That's fine.
So far I haven't really been watching the news or whatever, but Trump kind of reminded me of that.
Yes.
He's just kind of sitting in the White House, I guess. And I did hear that he's been tweeting about Joe Biden and the election and stuff.
He has. So he actually, because I do watch the news, he actually has been out and about. He was actually in Iowa yesterday. So he is not cooped up, he's not locked himself in the White House or anything.
Oh.
But he does go to his wealthy golf course that he owns, and he does go to his home in Florida, and he's there with other wealthy people. So yeah, if you mention Trump, President Trump, if you mention him, he would fit in of that class of people who has the means to live their life differently than we do, right? Who wants to go next? Oh, you both raised your hand. Nice of you, Tanner. Go ahead, Mary.
I'm sure this is, but like, once people realize, okay, people are dying for like both of them, they're like, oh, we should probably get away from all these people, because I'm sure they're somehow causing the death.
You
And they
should get
don't
away
want
from
me.
what? The other people? Yes, that's exactly what they're doing. Okay, and I think I'm gonna put words into Mary's mouth, but I think that's what she means. Do you think that wealthy people think that the virus is coming from us little peons? We're dirty, or, you know, probably not consciously, they're not thinking of that, but if there's ever anything that's gonna divide us even more, it might be some sort of health issue where they think, oh, I need to stay away from them, they've got they've got the Rona, right? Right? Yeah, and we need to stay away from people who have been exposed, or we need to socially distance just to stay healthy, but we don't look down on people because they're sick, or because they have the potential to get sick. I think we all know, hey, I could be next, right? We know that, okay, Tanner?
So I mentioned that, so the king, when he locked himself up and stuff, like,
Yep,
he's basically able to live kind of normal yet compared to poor people.
excellent.
And then, so like, I put like the king of the basketball, so like LeBron James, so that's his nickname.
The king, right?
Yeah, so
King James.
he was able to live normally yet in his $1 million mansion, because I mean, he has a basketball court and stuff, and he's
Sure.
still able to train with his kids and stuff.
There wasn't any hardship for him probably, maybe getting food in, you know, but I'm sure he had a grocery store bring it to him, but he got to stop playing basketball, but was still getting paid at the time. He was able to start playing basketball again because he's in the bubble with the NBA. You know what, I just thought of that, I'm glad you brought it up. The bubble, you guys know what we're talking about when I talk about the bubble? Okay, the NBA players have all been together since end of June, beginning of July. And they can't leave their little bubble because, and they get, I don't know the details as much as I used
They
to.
have to, when they come back to the bubble, they can't play, or they can't like basically leave their room for.
They have to
2 weeks.
quarantine for a while. Okay, so they're all in this hotel together, they're all playing their games in one space, they call it the bubble, okay? But Prince Prospero's castle is the bubble, okay? And those NBA players have been pretty protected, they've had a pretty low infection rate, right? Low positive rate, and it's worked for them. And the other thing that the NBA has done that's been pretty awesome is they developed this new they paid to have somebody, I think Duke University, I'm not sure, develop a new type of coronavirus test that involves saliva instead of sticking that thing up in your nose, okay? And the FDA just approved that saliva test a couple days ago, so the NBA might have ended up doing something wonderful that's gonna help all of us, because you're not gonna have to have that test where they put that thing all the way up your nose. You're just gonna be able to use saliva, and I heard you can be able to use it from home, so you can do it yourself. Wouldn't it be nice if we had that test, you know? So yeah, that's a good one too. Anybody else have any other things that you thought of, that you wrote about that we haven't talked about? I just think it's similar. Like, rich people, this is what my kids wrote last fall. Rich people have vacation homes. If the Rona is bad in New York City, they go to Florida. Or they go to Arizona. If it gets bad in Arizona, they go back to New York because now New York is good, right? They don't have to expose themselves like the rest of us because they might not be working right now, but they probably have more savings than we do. Do you think that some, on the other hand though, do you think that some of the wealthy people might be starting to struggle just a little bit the longer this goes on? who cannot, which group of artists cannot really do their job right now, at least publicly, be out amongst the people. This is the one thing that I missed in my life more than anything this summer. Musicians can't tour. I was supposed to see the Rolling Stones in May. They might be dead by the time they can tour again, right? You know, musicians can't go out and make money, and their big tour season is coming to an end. It's summertime. They make a lot of money in the summertime. They can't. They could record from home, but those concert tours make a big bunch of money. So that's one that I can think of because it's affected me, but they're not able to do their livelihood anymore. So that might be how some of us are similar. So make sure you finish your sentences, make sure you submit that, turn it in. I'll read through those, but we need to finish reading our story, and that's what we're gonna do next. So I'm gonna get my Chromebook pulled up. I didn't think to do that. We're coming to the end of the story. And it's midnight.
So since you like bought those tickets and everything, did they have to like refund you, or are you just?
You know, that's a really good question. My husband bought them on the secondary market, meaning he bought them from like Vivid Seats or something like that. So he bought it. So he hasn't gone into the account to see if he's gotten his money back, or he hasn't gone in to see what to do yet. He's kind of afraid to. A lot of times what they say is if the concert is rescheduled, you can just use your tickets then. But I don't know that it's been rescheduled. Like we had another one that we were supposed to go to, and we were supposed to go just to Sioux City to see Three Dog Night. And that one's been rescheduled, so we can just use our tickets. So hopefully the Stones will be back in Minneapolis next May, which means I won't get to come to your graduation, because that's when it was supposed to be last year, was graduation. So yeah. And he paid too much money for him too, so I think he feels bad. All right, so we were at the end of the page, and we were at the end of page 7, okay? And it was midnight, okay? And the night's winding down. We have the stroke of 12, and at the end of page 7, this masked figure that no one had seen the whole rest of the night comes into the castle. Okay, and I'll read like the last 4 lines of page 7. And it says, and the rumor of this new presence having spread itself whisperingly around, there arose at length from the whole company a buzz or a murmur expressive of surprise, like they can't believe that someone new is there. And then finally they had that feeling of terror, of horror, and disgust. Okay, so that person must look pretty bad. An assembly of phantasms, such as I have painted, this is Poe talking, it may be well supposed that no ordinary appearance could have excited such a sensation. In truth, the masquerade, the masks being worn that night, there were no limits to them. Okay, so there were some pretty crazy masks out here, but the figure in question had out-Heroded Herod. So out of all the crazy masks from that night, this guy's was over the top, crazier than everybody else. So he really stood out from the crowd. Okay, he had gone beyond the bounds of even the prince's ideas of what was appropriate. So it's kind of inappropriate too. There are chords in the hearts of the most reckless which cannot be touched without emotion. Even with the utterly lost, to whom life and death are equally jests, there are matters of which no jest can be made. So what that jest means to make fun of, so it's like, you know, sometimes people take it too far, and that's what's happening here. It was kind of a crazy situation anyway, but this guy's gone beyond, okay? The figure was tall and gaunt. Actually, I have to go up. The whole company indeed seemed now deeply to feel that the costume and the bearing of the stranger was totally inappropriate. The figure was tall and gaunt, and he was covered from head to foot in the clothing of the grave. Okay, so what do you picture him as wearing if he's clothed in the habiliments of the grave? What would he be wearing? I'm thinking of a mummy with tattered cloths. I don't know, maybe not. But I'm also thinking he was wearing something black. The mask, which concealed his face, was made so nearly to resemble the look of a stiffened corpse. And even the closest scrutiny might have had difficulty in detecting that this wasn't an actual corpse walking around. And we might have been able to handle all of this, but the manner had gone so far, this man, as to assume the type of the Red Death. So what this guy had dressed up as is the Red Death itself, and that's what these people are trying to protect themselves from in this castle, okay? His vesture, his clothing, was dabbled in blood, and his broad brow with all the features of the face was besprinkled with the scarlet horror. So there's blood all over his face. He looks like he's suffering from the Red Death, but he's walking around, okay? Think of the Grim Reaper, it's all full of blood. When the eyes of the Prince Prospero fell upon this spectral image, which means he looks almost ghostly, okay, which with a slow and solemn movement, as it more fully to estate its role, stalked to and fro among the waltzers, he was seen, this is the prince, he was seen to be convulsed. In the first moment with a strong shudder, even or of terror or distaste, but in the next his brow reddened with rage. So this guy walks in, he looks like a corpse, he looks like he's suffering from the Red Death, and at first, all the people look at him and was like, oh, what? This guy's taking it too far. And the prince looks at him, and the prince is like, what? And then the prince gets mad, okay? He said in the first moment with a strong shudder, either of terror or distaste, but in the next, he got mad. His brow reddened with rage. This is the host of the party. Who dares, he demanded hoarsely of the partiers who stood near him, who dares insult us with this blasphemous mockery? Seize him, unmask him, so that we know who we get to hang at sunrise from the gallows, okay? Take his costume off because we're gonna hang this guy. It was in the eastern or the blue chamber in which stood Prince Prospero as he uttered these words. They rang throughout the 7 rooms loudly and clearly, for the prince was a bold and robust man, and the music had become hushed at the waving of his hand. It was in the blue room where stood the prince with a group of pale partiers by his side. At first, as he spoke, there was a slight rushing movement of this group in the direction toward the intruder, who at the moment was also near at hand, and now, with deliberate and stately step, made closer approach to the speaker. So he's coming at him. But from a certain nameless awe with which the mad assumptions of the mummer had inspired the whole party, there were found none who put forth a hand to seize him. So that, unimpeded, he passed within a yard of the prince's person. And while the vast assembly, as if with one impulse, shrank from the centers of the rooms to the walls, this masked intruder made his way uninterruptedly, but with the same solemn and measured step which had distinguished him from the first, through the blue chamber to the purple, through the purple to the green, through the green to the orange, through this again to the white, and even thence to the violet, ere a decided movement had been made to arrest him. I read that with the wrong emphasis. But basically, everybody's scared of him, okay? They're shrinking up against the walls. They're letting him walk by. They want nothing to do with him. And he's just walking through because everybody's scared, and he's getting to the end of the rooms here. It was then, however, that the Prince Prospero, maddening with rage and the shame of his own momentary cowardice, rushed hurriedly through the 6 chambers, while none followed him on account of a deadly terror that had seized upon all. He bore aloft a drawn dagger and had approached rapidly to within 3 or 4 feet of the retreating now figure, when the latter, having attained the extremity of the velvet apartment, so that the visitor is in the black apartment now, turned suddenly and confronted the prince, who was his pursuer. There was a sharp cry, and the dagger dropped, gleaming upon the sable carpet, upon which instantly afterward fell prostrate in death the Prince Prospero. Then, summoning the wild courage of despair, a throng of the partiers at once threw themselves into the black room and seized the visitor, whose tall figure stood erect and motionless within the shadow of the ebony clock, gasped in unutterable horror at finding the grave cerements and corpse-like mask which they had handled with so violent a rudeness, untenanted by any tangible form. So that's Poe's way of saying, when they went to grab the guy who had just killed the prince, all that was there were his clothes. He was gone. And now was acknowledged the presence of the Red Death. He had come like a thief in the night, and one by one dropped the revelers in the blood-bedewed halls of their revel, and died each in the despairing posture of his fall. And the life of the ebony clock went out with that of the last of the happiness, and the flames of the tripods expired, and darkness and decay and the Red Death held illimitable dominion over all. Meaning, who's the winner at the end? The Red Death. So hopefully it's not the same with our pandemic, right? You know, that's kind of scary to read it now that we're in the middle of a pandemic. The pandemic snuck in there through those welded gates and got him away. No matter how many precautions they took, they quarantined for what they've been there 6 months. It still got them. And it was more fun to teach it last year because we were all thinking, those rich people deserve to die anyway. And now it's a little bit different this year, thinking, we've taken all these precautions and we're still here, we're still standing. It hasn't snuck in yet, right? Keep our fingers crossed and keep washing our hands. All right, we've got about 15 minutes. We might not be able to watch the whole thing, but there's 2 videos, 2 7-minute videos that show our story. You wanna watch them? Yep, if you didn't get it before, this will help you understand it. You guys wanna say goodbye for today to the camera?